Hello everyone. In today's video, we're going to be moving on to a little more advanced as far as VATSIM goes. I'm going to kind of treat this one as this is my second VATSIM flight. So right now, I'm just going to kind of walk you through the process. Our previous first VATSIM flight basically got you into the plane. It got you doing a little bit of pattern work, just kind of getting comfortable with using the radio. Today's purpose is going to give you a chance to actually file a flight plan, fly that flight plan, and not make yourself a nervous wreck. So what we've done today basically is a couple different pieces. Let's go ahead and get up the internet here so we can make things a little bit easier for you. There we are. We're going to be flying from Claremont, which is basically in eastern Maryland here, right on the edge of good old-fashioned Pennsylvania. And we're going to be flying down to Delaware, which is actually, this is a specific one. This is Cheswold Airport. Now, you're probably saying, well, where are you? Well, the reason for this is a couple-fold. First of all, because we're using real-world weather, you can take a look up at my normal stomping ground. It's all a bunch of red dots. The second thing we know is if you actually pop onto the VATSIM map, give it a second, you'll probably notice on that VATSIM map the fact that there's no air traffic controllers that are operating in our region. As a matter of fact, the closest air traffic controller to us is up here at Cabe. This is Allentown Approach. This is Pennsylvania. He has a 30-mile radius before we even need procedures for him, but his normal radius is 20, which is going to put him about here. We are down here, so we're completely safe of any air traffic controllers. Keep in mind, during this video, at any time, an air traffic controller could pop up on us, which is why we want to make sure we do the other steps. So we're going to take a view of our flight. So let's go to it. So first things first, I've confirmed all my weather is going to be decent. It's not that great. If you actually take a look in the simulator, you can see that, again, this is real world weather, that it's a bit on the cloudy side, but the cloud's going to be high enough. The other thing I noticed, of course, is we have a really iggy crosswind that's clearly gusting towards us, and I don't know what to do with the runway arrangement here, because we have to go backwards and around. Crazy. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop this one up real quick. You can see I've got everything all planned out. 25 nautical miles is a really good distance for your first cross-country. If you've actually, it's not legally cross-country, you 50. First time you're doing an IFR, or I should say a VFR. Look at me talking funny. Flight inside of VATSIM. So I'm going to go over here and let's go ahead and do it to it. So first things first, you always want to file a flight plan, even if you're staying in the traffic pattern. This helps the sanity of the controllers if they should pop on. We're flying a Cessna 172 today. My weight category is light equipment. So when you're going to be doing anything with equipment, there's a couple different letters you're going to use a lot. We're always going to use S, assuming that you have all kind of the regular equipment. Usually what I do is S, B, LPV is just a certain type of approach. L, you're going to do SBD, so it's going to be my first standard. We have LPV capability, and we also have DME capability on board because we have a G1000. Let's see what else we got here. ADF, we do have ADF, but that comes under standard equipment. Actually, does it come under standard? No. So you can actually come here and do S. Oh, sorry. Is it F or is it A? I always get it backwards. It is F, isn't it? It is F. SBDF simply means that we have ADF. We also have GPS capability because we're a G1000. Scrolling down. The other one we always like to throw in here too. Scrolling down here, we have PBN approved. This is the letter R. That's basically going to say that we have very, 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 very good performance-based navigation. It just means we have an IFR capable GPS essentially. And of course, if we have anything else special, we can come down here. Next code we need to care about is going to be our transponder. They usually say use the letter L. L is absolutely fine because remember, this is an ultra flight simulator. Don't worry about it. So departure. So if you remember a minute ago, we mentioned our departure today is going to be 58 Mike. And our off time, let's see, the current time is 13:21 Zulu. We'll say we're leaving at 13:25. That should give us plenty of time. Altitude, we're going to stay nice and low today, about 2,500 feet. The reason we're staying so low is we know there's some pretty nasty clouds a little bit to the north of us. Let me come over here. And they're showing a ceiling of 1,200 feet. So don't be surprised if we have to do some fancy flying to get away. Airspeed, it's a Cessna 110. Arrival, like I said, we're going to be flying over to 33 November. Alternate, let's see what we should use for alternate. This is where they look for us if we're terribly lost here. We'll call it MIV, looks pretty good. KMIV. Remember, always use iCal codes. Time en route, it's going to take us 15 minutes. 0015. Fuel endurance, if you're flying a Cessna, it's about 5 hours. And of course, coming down here, you can put a remark. I always put this one on here just to make people a little bit more sane. All this nasty stuff down here, don't worry about it. It's whoop. There we go. That simply says direct remarks, YouTube video. I'm just putting that down there to kind of let people know that if I contact them or let them, they're going to see that in the little remarks and they're going to be like, oh God, watch out. It's just a nice little thing I like to do here. So now that I'm going to go ahead and read everything real quick. Looks good. Let's check all my numbers and letters. Looks good. I'm going to press the file plan. That's it. So now we have a filed VFR flight plan. If you need to make any changes, by the way, make the change and just press the file button again. You're on your way. All right, let's jump over to the simulator. So now that we're in the simulator, what I like to do now is I like to go ahead and grab my handy dandy little V-Pilot right here, and I like to go and mash the connect button. So we're red 6.4 today. Our code is C172. It'll actually look it up for you. And we do not have a cell cal code. Don't worry about it. Press connect. Give it a second. And now we are connected. I'm taking a look. There's no controllers in range except for, like I said, Allentown, which is a little bit to the north of us. We're never going to come close to them. So again, when you're doing your first, second real flight, try to stay away from controllers just to practice everything. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. I'm going to do a quick start today. Again, I don't need to do anything sophisticated. It's just a matter of kind of getting us going for the purposes of demonstration. G1000. I wish it did that, but it really doesn't. It just makes a weird fan noise, and that's it. That's all it does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and rev us up to about 1,000 in the RPMs. Yeah, a little bit more than that. Go ahead and lean us for taxi down here. Remember, we are on their network right now, and we have filed a flight plan, and this is an uncontrolled airport. So one thing I forgot to mention is both of the waypoints I selected today are both uncontrolled. So I'm going to go ahead and rev this sucker up just a teeny tiny bit more. And that should be plenty. All right, let's switch over to flight simulator mode. Looking around, looks pretty good. Okay, so normally what you would do is in the real world is you'd find out what the Ctaf is for this particular airport. Now, finding the Ctaf for this particular airport, let's go fire up Opera real quick here. So if I were to type in AirNav, and we were to go to our airport, which is going to be 58 Mike, press enter. What it would do is it would open this page up, and we scroll down here, and it would give us a Unicom. By bizarre coincidence, our Unicom happens to be the VATSIM Unicom of 122.8. So that makes our lives a little bit simpler today. Hey, we got one victory so far. All right, so we're going to get back in the plane. We're going to go to COM 1, and we're just going to dial in 122.8. 122.8, swap. So now we are ready to go. So before I actually get this thing rolling, I'm going to go ahead and pre-select a couple things here. Remember, you are flying on their networks right now. At any time, a controller could show up and surprise us. I'm going to go set my CDI correctly here. It looks like the GPS is getting a little weird. This is my first point. It's called time. I think this is a new thing that they did. I don't know why they changed it, but like I said, I'm not going to stress about it too much. So we're going to go ahead and say kilo. Let's go scoot over to Opera real fast here. We'll see here. We're going to kilo, tree, November. So we're going to do tree. And we're just going to make this the letter N here. It's freaking out, which means that it only recognizes 3 November. Lame. So we'll just come down here. We'll go ahead and dial in the first 3. Yeah, half of all plane flying, by the way, starts on the ground. Oh, it always starts on the ground, but it always ends on the ground, too. But most of flying is sitting here and dialing these things in, or sitting at the FBO and sitting on your little laptop and trying to get these all pre-programmed. Ugh. All right, now we're in business, so it looks like we're heading roughly south. So all we have to do now is sort of announce our intentions. I'm looking around. I don't see anybody immediately going to be in my way or anything like that. Looks like the windsock is favoring that runway, which if we pop again over an Opera real fast, I'm going to call this up so you can see I can figure these things out. If you actually look at that particular runway here, remember, we're kind of parked facing to the south here. This runway is going to be the runway that we're going to be interested in. So if we were actually to call up information on Clermont, you'd see, let's see here, runway tree 1 or runway 1 tray. It's definitely going to be runway 1 tray. So let's go ahead and now pop back over here. And let's go ahead and get taxiing over to that runway. Make sure all my controls are set up correctly. All right. Delightful. You can hear me all my banging and stuff like that. If you ever run into a situation, by the way, where you can't unface the airplane, one of the tricks I use is you go to slew mode, turn yourself around, and voila, now we're facing the correct direction. Gotta love that trick. All right, so let's get going. So at this point, I'm not going to make any calls just yet until I get to a point where I'm actually going to be potentially blocking traffic or anything along those lines. At small, uncontrolled airports like this, it's fairly typical. Honestly, I feel like I'm driving on the road here. I'm going to pull back all the way on the controls. Whoa, world hole. What is this, Minecraft? Just going to get ourselves up this little hill here. I really hope it's not this bad in the real world. This is sketchy. So we're just going to kind of make our way over to the runway. I can see there's a main taxiway right here. If you could identify the name of that taxiway, that's good. A lot of times what people do, if they don't have a taxiway name, is they'll just say, along the parallel taxiway or something along those lines. Wow, that is literally a pure crosswind. So we're going to go ahead and stick our controls into the wind. So I'm going to push them all the way forward. And I'm going to come up to this handy-dandy taxiway. This taxiway is called Alpha. So we're just going to go ahead and call it. I'm going to stop right here before I cross that magical line. This is a good place, by the way, to do your run-up so that you don't have to invade the rest of the space. Obviously, think of the people behind you before you do anything like this, because if they're busy or something like that, you don't want to be blasting them. So go ahead and check to make sure all systems are working correctly. And that is one heck of a mag drop. That's actually so far this aircraft could not be flown. Come back up to 1700. Try the other magneto. Wow. Okay, this aircraft probably could not be flown, and my magnetos are actually not strong enough to actually fly the plane. This is terrible. So now what we do, of course, is that we're going to go ahead and I'll let everybody know that we're taxiing via Alpha at Claremont. Claremont traffic, Red 64 is taxiing via Alpha to runway 13. And that's it. So now we're just going to go ahead and get ourselves rev. Notice since there's no air traffic control and since we're at an uncontrolled airport, we're completely responsible for separation. We're responsible for all of our calls. We're responsible for everything. So I kind of keep that in the back of your head when you're doing these kinds of flights, that if somebody suddenly shows up because they recognize you, you have to be able to communicate with them fairly efficiently. Now, the fun thing that happens in the real world, of course, is somebody lands and all of a sudden you end up facing each other, and then it's the game of, where do you go? No, I go first. No, you go first. No, I go first. And a general rollout, whenever you're looking for who owns which side of the runway or something along those lines, it's always going to be the person on your right. That's just, kind of universal. All right, I'm just kind of taxiing running up here. Pretty good sized runway. Like I said, that wind is tremendously strong, and it's a really bad crosswind, which I swear that's the only thing I fly in these days. I seem to take right traffic, and I seem to only do crosswinds. As long as your airspeed indicator doesn't start showing airspeed, I wouldn't stress out too much about what's going on here. Just kind of keep us rumbly up the runway here. Love it. Look at those clouds. I don't even know if we're going to get up to 2,500 feet. The rule, by the way, is when you're looking at a cloud, if you need to identify whether or not it's a danger or a hazard to you, just think about if it takes 10 seconds to get to it, you're too close to it. That's just a relatively simple rule of thumb. All right, so we're going to go ahead and bounce up to the edge of the runway here. I'm going to hit my brakes. Go ahead and pull this thing around. We've already done our run-up, so we don't have to worry about that at all. And I'm going to go ahead and point ourselves right into the dead of the wind, get back up to 1,000 RPM, and now we're ready to go ahead and get going. We're holding short of one tree right now. So let's go ahead and take a look to make sure everything's good at Claremont. Looks good. I'm just going to come down here and check all my little handles and gauges. It's always a good idea if you're online, go ahead and flip on the nav light just to let everybody else know. I control on the landing light as well. Again, make yourself a little bit more visible, so if people do not see you, at least there's a slight chance that at least they'll see your lights. So we'll give everybody the quick little wiggle before we get going. So now we're just going to announce what we're going to do. So we're going to be taking off runway 13 south departure. Make sure my buttons are good. I'm checking everything real quick. You should as well. Claremont traffic, Cessna Red 64 is taking off runway 13, south departure, Claremont. And that's it. So now we just want to kind of bumble over to the runway. Again, mind your control positions, because like I said, we got one heck of a crosswind today. Go ahead and pull that controller way to that side, and let's do it. Stick my head up a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. So usually what happens here is as you start accelerating, you're going to start feeling the plane start twisting to the right a little bit. That's when you can start backing off on your ailerons just a little bit. All right, almost up to rotation speed. 55, 56, 55. There it is. Woo! That plane wanted to sink. We're going to go ahead and take advantage of our good climbing speed here of about 65 knots till we get clear of our obstacles. Looks good right there. And then we're going to go ahead and nose over. And we're going to take a nice gentle right and proceed on course. And that's all there is to it. So our next phase of the flight is basically going to be cruising. Now what we need to do during cruising is we need to keep an eye on our maps to make sure nobody suddenly appears on the map who's going to be in control of our particular aircraft. In this particular case, I'm not going to worry about it too much because like I said, we're in a pretty quiet spot. There's not a lot of international controllers where we are. Those people tend to, at least in the United States, kind of congregate up north and to the east a little bit more. So I think I'll be pretty safe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and climb up to my cruise altitude here. And once I get there, I'll go ahead and unpause, and then we'll go ahead and kind of take a look at how things go. All right, we've reached the top of climb. I'm looking out the window, and I immediately notice there are clouds below me. Now, believe it or not, it is legal to fly on top of a cloud in VFR conditions. It's called basically VFR on top. The problem is where we need to go is going to be under this cloud. So we need to stay at least 1,000 feet above this thing and 2,000 feet to the side, if you want to kind of imagine at an angle sort of a thing. So we're going to run into a fun little situation where we're actually going to have to kind of do one of these in order to safely land the plane. Now, this is, again, just like in the real world, it's something you're going to run into from time to time. But that being said, everything else is looking good. Our RPM's a little high. I'm going to go ahead and back the throttle at just a teeny tiny bit. We don't need to be running nearly that fast. 2,600 is basically the upper limit as far as RPM if you're trying to cruise around in a Cessna. Obviously, you can use more because it's a flight simulator, but it's your fuel, your money. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at how we're doing in the rest of the world here. I'll go ahead and flip on my modes here real quickly. Take a look at Delaware Air Park. It does have an ATIS code. It's an AWAS. It's 120125. We're going to have to go ahead and dial that in and see what they say. The other thing I can see, which is kind of fun, is if you actually pop up on VATSIM, somebody has just appeared in Washington. So it's one of those things like I was saying earlier, you have to kind of keep an eye on during your flight. Obviously, if you miss the fact somebody jumped on, it's not the end of the world. Don't worry about it unless you like, try to land at like, Washington or something like that. You're going to have a problem. But this is us. You'll notice that there's not a lot of complete information down here, but if you actually have more information, you'll see that it says 58 Mike, and we're arriving at Tree November, just like I said. It also shows you all your remarks, so if you want to put something nice and sarcastic in here, somebody can come find you, and it's actually pretty funny. So go ahead and hide that information. You can see we're just cruising right along there. All right, let's get ready for landing. So we need 120.125 is going to be the AWOS frequency. So what I'm going to do is put that in COM2 just to make myself sane. I'm going to do 120. Whoops, I always make this mistake. 120. It's a weird frequency, not going to lie. 120.125. So we're going to go down to 125. It's actually quicker to go the other way. This is why it's nice to have a mouse wheel. 125. I'm going to hit swap. We're going to go ahead and turn that radio on. Don't forget to do that. And let's take a listen. Winds 217 at 17. Oh my God, 17 knot winds. Oh, this is not safe. Ceiling 1,300 feet overcast, which means we're going to have to go down to 800 feet to get underneath that, which we can do here because, believe it or not, we can. But in the real world, this would be a diversion. We'd actually have to turn around and go back from which we came. So kind of keep that in the back of your head. So like we said, the wind was coming out of. So I'll wait for it to kind of cycle back around again. By the way, be careful here. You actually want to do something like this, because you want to be listening to COM2. You don't want to be talking on COM2. Because like I said, if we need to be talked to somebody who's on the regular VATSIM network, we need to be able to hear them during that particular time. So a fun trick here is that you can quickly cycle the frequencies to go ahead and trigger it to come back on again. All right, 1, 2. I hate it how it does that. See how it changes your frequency as well? Well, we're just going to have to wait for that to come around again, but that's okay. I think we broke it. 216 at 18. It even got worse. So go ahead and shut that off. And obviously this is going to be way more exciting than it needs to be. So what we like to do is make a call once we get within 10 nautical miles of our destination. You can see I'm about 13 nautical miles away. This is going to be kind of a sketchy approach, but hey, it's what makes it fun, right? So let's see, 33. This is the Delaware Air Park. Delaware Air Park traffic. Cessna Red 64 is 13 miles to the north, inbound. So we're just kind of leaving them a quick little heads up saying, hey, we're to the north. We're going to be coming down for landing in just a minute. So we're going to go ahead and pop this to the other option. Again, we're staying on the common traffic advisory frequency. We can always once in a while go poke onto vPilot real quick just to make sure nothing's come in through us. Like I said, look at all these things that have suddenly started appearing. Don't panic. Again, like this is your second flight. Nothing bad's going to happen. So we need to get through these clouds. So unfortunately for us, this is going to be extra exciting. Let's go ahead and pop on Skyvector, I should say. Skyvector will work perfectly fine for us real fast. We have a little notice here. We know that the wind is coming mostly out of the west, so we're going to be landing on 27 today. So it's going to make it very interesting. Just for my own sanity, though, I'm going to go ahead and check something real quick one more time. 216 at 17. 216 at 17. Let's go pop over to Opera real fast. 216 at 17 is definitely going to be here. So we're going to be coming from the north. We'll go ahead and call it up here so you can take a look at it real fast. We're going to be coming out of the north. We're going to come here and we need to land at this runway. So to me, that means cross the runway, left, land. That's probably going to be the safest. The other thing we can do is right traffic, or because the clouds are so sketchy, we of course can try to dive underneath it as well. But again, what I'm doing right now is actually technically legal, but it's borderline not okay. So I really recommend when you go to do this for your first, pick really clear weather to fly over so you don't have an issue. But we do need to start coming down. So what we're going to do when we get to 10 nautical miles is we're basically just going to announce our intentions. Intentions are going to be to cross midfield into a left downwind for 27. Delaware Air Park traffic, Red 64 is 10 miles to the north. Going to cross midfield into a left downwind for 27 Delaware Air Park. And that's it. So they know exactly what we're doing. They know exactly where they are, and we know exactly what we intend to do. So we're going to go ahead and lose some altitude. Again, we have to stay 1,000 feet above the top of this cloud here. So I'm going to get a little closer. Again, this is a perfect example of how to make your day more exciting than it needs to be. So I'll do a flight level change mode, which is nice and simple. Go ahead and back the throttle to about 2,500 RPM, or 2,400 RPM, and we'll do 2350. Why not? And that should be more than enough. I'll go ahead and enrich my mixture. And down we go. If you seem to be going a little on the slow to the down to go, I'm just going to go ahead and reduce RPM a little bit more. Don't overdo this. It's always best to use your engine in order to control your altitude and vertical speed. And once you start playing with the elevator, you're going to start changing other forces, and that makes things kind of tricky. All right, down we go. So it looks like we're getting a break here. I can see that the wind is kind of pushed the clouds out of the way, which is going to make it a little bit safer for us. Runway, by the way, is going to be right off our nose. You can't miss it once we get there. It's going to be a little tough to see on our display, but it will work pretty well. I'm going to back the RPM a little bit more, just to get a little more vertical speed out of this thing. Remember, it takes about, let's call it 3 miles or so to lose 1,000 feet. So in 3 miles, and when we get to about 5 nautical miles, we should be just about at the traffic pattern altitude. Speaking of traffic pattern altitude, if we actually pop this up real fast, we can go back over here, Claremont. Actually, I'm sorry, not Claremont, Delaware Air Park. Pop it open, and we can take a look right at the top. Surveyed elevation is 55 feet MSL, which gives us a traffic pattern of 1,050 feet 5, again, just at 1,000, which rounds up to 1,100. So we actually got to come over here and add 100 to that. Boop, and now we are all set. Now we just sort of descend. I can see this cloud here. We cannot run into this cloud. I'm sort of watching what the wind is kind of doing to us here. It's kind of pushing all of us kind of this way. So that tells me if I aimed here, this cloud would kind of get blown out of the way. Of course, if we aimed here, we'd move with the cloud. So we'd actually have to aim here in order to make the cloud start moving that way. Again, problems you'll actually face in the real world. All right, try to spot where we're trying to go here. All right, so what I'm going to do is when we get to 5 nautical miles, I'll go ahead and I'll make my call again just to let them know what my intentions were, just in case anybody else is out there listening. I'm going to go check out the VATSIM map again real fast, double check, like I said, that nobody's appeared above us, but I'm pretty confident nobody has. Let's see what we got here. Nope, looks pretty good. I think we're pretty safe so far. Hey, nobody said this would be easy, but I think it's a lot of fun because it's ironically way more realistic than anything you've probably flown so far. So like I said, I like stuff like that. All right, I'm actually going to level off right here. I'm getting way too close to that cloud. Remember, VFR means visual flight rules. I'm going to pop that button right there. In the normal button, in the real plane, there it goes. Just me being incompetent, as always. So what we could do in the real world is we could actually kind of swing around here like this to try to get around this cloud. But like I said, as long as we can stay 500 feet above it, or 1,000 feet above it rather, which, yeah, I'm not going to be staying 1,000 feet above that. So yep, we're going to have to go around the cloud. So I'm going to go ahead and kill my automatic pilot. I'm going to go ahead and push my foot to the right. Go ahead and take us over here, and I'm just going to go right around that cloud. Now, in the VATSIM universe, they don't have super accurate radar, so they don't actually know that we got that close to the cloud. They don't actually know if we even went through the cloud. You know, that's not that big of a deal. But if you're sticking to the true rules of VFR flying here, we'd want to stay out of that thing right there. But again, things like this happen. Now we're going to swing our ways back there. You can get a good look at the downs down below us. And look at that. It barely did anything to us. But looking off the nose, you can see that things look pretty significant as far as weather goes. So I'm going to go ahead and hold ourselves right here. Go ahead and flip on the automatic pilot again. You can see that quick little zigzag did basically nothing to us, but it kept us completely legal, which was pretty awesome. Okay, so now if you take a look at my distance, I got about 3.5 nautical miles to go, which is pretty good. The air park will be appearing just off our nose. Like I said, you can't miss it. It's this thing right here. Delaware Air Park traffic, red 64, is 3 miles to the north, going across midfield into your left downwind for 27 Delaware. So that's basically all we need to do. So now it's just a matter of landing this sucker, which is not too bad, but you need to finish coming down. So we'll come down to 1,100 feet. We'll do a vertical speed, down, 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 down. We'll do 500 feet per minute. We'll get this thing going down fast. There's our runway. Switch to heading hold mode, just to make my life a little bit simpler here. And we're just going to go ahead and cross, go left, 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 left. Land the plane. Again, we have a bit of a headwind now, which is awesome, because it's going to make our flight a little bit easier today. And again, there's been no air traffic control, yet we've been on VATSIM this entire time. Actually, I got to come to the right a little bit. That wind is very, very strong. But again, I've flown in real-world wind worse than this. I don't recommend it, but you can do it, because usually with wind speed comes wind gusts. So just because speed is 17, it does not mean in the real world that your gusts would also be 25 or something like that. So it's something you got to keep in mind. So there is our midfield right there. I'm going to start slowing us down to about 2,100 RPM. Is kind of the, let's go around inside the air traffic pattern, but we need to slow down first. So come down to about 2,000 RPM. Nice. Give it just a tiny bit of power. So now we just tell everybody, Delaware Air Park traffic, red 64 is crossing midfield, left downwind 27, Delaware Air Park. And that's it. Unfortunately, you can't hear like the kind of sound every time I push that button, so you just kind of have to use your imagination every time I talk like that I actually did push the button. So here's our air park. You can see that wind is absolutely blasting us to the left here, which is, welcome to real world flying. We're just going to fly right on over and take a peek. You can see the windsock definitely prefers that runway. So that's going to be the one we're going to be landing on. Big old 27 right there. You can't miss it. Was that like a mini 27 next to it? It is! Look at that! It has like a mini 27. Oh, I love that. It's like a 27 light is what I'm going to call it. Delaware Airpark traffic. Red 64 is in left downwind for 27 Delaware Airpark. All right, let's put the plane on the ground. Reduce my RPM a little bit. Keep our speed up just a little bit. Nice visual reference maneuver here. We're just going to aim right for the end of the runway. Looks good. This is going to be one of those landings where you're going to have to do the turn into 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 the turn. Don't worry about it too much, though. All right, down we go. First notch of flaps coming down. This is a good time, of course, to double check all your controls, make sure that you have your landing lights on. Again, you're trying to make yourself more visible for other people who are on the server. This isn't just for you anymore. It's just one of those things. Give myself a couple notches of trim. We're looking for about 65 knots in this aircraft. You can do 60 if you're one of those people, but again, it's whatever works for you. It doesn't matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and call a base. Now, we're pretty wide here, so this is going to be a very, very tight base to final. Delaware Airpark traffic, red 64 is on left base for 27 Delaware Airpark. That's all we had to call. We're just going to go ahead and make our turn now. Like I said, this is going to be one heck of basically a turn into a turn into a turn into a turn. So we're going to pull it right into final here. Check my flaps to make sure they're in the correct position. Looks good. There it is. We're going to look out our left window and see the end of the runway. Actually, we're in pretty good shape. This is much, much better than I expected it to be. So I just kind of follow the end of the runway there. We'll go pull ourselves right onto final. Remember, the runway is not the runway is the runway. So again, this is just kind of interesting how that works. I like that. I picked the fun one. Delaware Airpark traffic, red 64 is on final for 27 Delaware Airpark. That's all you got to say. Go ahead and pop our last notch of flaps down. Get our landing speed. I love that 27 left. It has a 27 and a 27 left. That is so cool. All right, let's go ahead and do our compass checks. No embarrassment during landings here. About 60 knots, so we're coming in very, very slow here, but that wind is so strong. Come to the right a little bit. We're going to go ahead and bring ourselves a nice little crab angle. Whenever you have really bad wind, I actually recommend using less than full flaps. It's going to make yourselves a little bit simpler. I'm going to go ahead and push my right foot forward and go ahead and dip my left wing down a little bit. Remember, the right foot's for basically keeping you lined up with the runway. The aileron here, my rolling left and right, is for keeping me lined up with the actual left-right end of the runway. Feet for straight, aileron for position, left-right position. About 58 knots, getting a little slow here. A little bit more power. I'm not going to pitch down a little bit for speed, because if I do, I'll smack into that tree. We're going to get ourselves right over the end of the runway here. Go ahead and back that throttle back. Once we're established, lift the nose up. We're going to play a little keep away with the ground. Whatever you're doing with your feet, go ahead and cancel it right as you touch down. A little bit of right foot. There we go. We are down. Nice. Hold the brakes. Nice. All right, let's get off this runway. Whoa, that's not a place to go off. That was a newbie mistake. So unfortunately for this one, we're going to have to go all the way down. But at this point, I think you guys are pretty familiar with the rest of the process. We're going to go ahead and get rid of the flaps and get everything else right. You got to love these crosswinds. Like, this is like real world flying now. It's never nice. It's just kind of how it is. All right, hopefully this video is helpful as far as preparing you for your second flight. At this point, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and taxi and go over to the kind of place here. At that point, what we do is we go ahead and say, it's clear of the runway. A red 64 is clear of the runway, Delaware Airpark. And then you can say whether or not you're taxiing. But other than that should get you enough confidence to go ahead and try out your second flight. For your third flight, we're going to bring in ground control just to make things a little bit more interesting. Other than that, enjoy.